So we're pivoting a little bit here, going a bit from the tech, the engineering side of things, to the content side of things, the storytelling side of things. So working at Microsoft, the team that I was working in, that Alex works in, is part of the events and studios team. We're under marketing, and a big part of our budgets and our responsibilities was to hold Microsoft events, external, internal, year-round. And so it's a big part of what corporate tech is about, putting on events of different types, like this one. And the big topic that we've all come across in the last year or two is digital. Back in 2021, Microsoft Production Studios produced Consumer Electronics Show in a virtual manner, all through our facility. So as we look at the digital conversation, digital first, we're going to start with the content folks and the storytellers, and Alex Georgescu, did I say that sort of right? Did I chop it up a little bit? Is going to lead the panel, and I'll let you guys go.
Can you hear me? There we go. Welcome. I've got Kyle, Alex, and Joe with me today to talk about Digital First transforms live event production. And I will say that Microsoft has been doing digital events and streaming their events for over a decade now. And the digital experience was kind of a second thought to everyone. The pre-pandemic, it was always the in-person experience was king, and then digital was just there. But following the pandemic, we shifted to digital only. So we had a lot of learnings and improved all the tools that we were already using. And then now we are doing digital first for Microsoft it means close to hybrid, but we are applying those learnings. We have shorter sessions. We have content available for everyone online. And digital events are just more inclusive and accessible and sustainable. So we are continuing our digital first approach as we shift to a hybrid model. So we'll start with a definition of what digital first events mean to you and your company, and what shifts you've seen over pre-pandemic and after pandemic. I'll start with Kyle.
Thanks. I think for us, that was the same. Our organization has been running events for about 30 years, and for 25 of those years, we've been hybrid, and we've had remote locations join us via satellite. And again, that was not an afterthought, but the main focus was everything happening in the room with the 7,000 to 10,000 people. And as a participant from outside the organization joining in, that was always rough. We always wanted more engagement with our speakers. Like we were seeing these people on stage, seeing thousands of people in a room, but we wanted more of that connection. And so then I joined up with the Global Leadership Network in the January of 2020, which was a great time to transition to an online or to an events organization, and moved across the country to work in an office that I didn't see for a couple of years. But 2020 brought us to a point where we had to completely change everything that we've ever done. And so there was no studio audience. Everything was digital. We were given the flexibility to really reimagine what our event could look like. And so we have a location that we use consistently. We were able to build a set on that stage. We were able to bring control booths and lighting designers and everyone onto that stage with cameras and prompters and a jib. And it worked really, really well for us. The benefit from the people watching was that they could see the speakers more clearly, they could make eye contact with those speakers, and they felt much more involved in the event. And then the other piece of that was flexibility was we could pre-record a lot of those speakers on the set. So the week of the event, our event is a Thursday, Friday, but that whole week we were able to do some pre-records for speakers who maybe didn't want to come in to a large space with lots of people. They wanted to, because again, this was August of 2020. We didn't really know what was going on. And we were able to roll from a live session into a pre-record with nobody knowing. And so it was, production-wise, it was so much nicer. It was so simple. It was pretty straightforward. And people watching online didn't know. Now, the downside for that was that we had a lack of energy in the room. We didn't have people, the 10,000 people, giving speakers feedback, laughing at jokes, applauding at something. And so that was something that we noticed. But we've taken on that approach now to a current day where we bill our in-room audience as a studio audience. We have it on the website where people can see pictures. Like, they will expect to see cameras at the front of the room with prompters. They'll have their own host talking to them before the broadcast goes live and kind of set them up well. And now our focus is on that online or that digital audience who are either watching at home, at an office, or in a room gathered together. And the benefit here, we bring back that community. You know, digital events are great, and they're fairly straightforward to pull off, but we miss what we have here today. We can't network, we can't engage with people. We don't get to meet people from other industries. And so we've been able to bring some of that back, but also spend some of our focus working on how do we bring in that networking digitally in a way that isn't cheesy, in a way that isn't forced, that's natural. And so that's been fun. So I guess for us, the way we define a digital first event is that the focus on the event from the get-go, from day one, is looking at the event through the eye of a remote viewer, somebody watching from outside the space, be it in a location with other people or by themselves. And I think that's worked well for us.
Thank you. A very interesting approach. And Alex.
Hi. So I've been doing a variety of digital style events, a couple thousand of them over the last 15 years. So the COVID was not particularly new for us, and we learned a lot as we started to do that. And so one of the things that when you first start doing digital events, you're just excited that they worked, right? You know, so you're just excited that everybody heard everybody. There was no echo, there was no feedback, there was all those things is all you care about. Then you start paying attention to stats that don't really matter because they make you feel good. So reach, total viewers, concurrent viewers, how we felt at the end of the event. All of those are kind of like numbers we like throwing around because they're bigger and they make us feel better. Then you start paying attention to the numbers that are hard. So the numbers that are hard for us to swallow, and the ones you have to pay attention to, are average view time, dwell time, attention time, sequential attendance. So how often do they come back? Do they come back tomorrow? Do they come back in a week? Those are things that are much harder numbers to start paying attention to. They're very confronting because oftentimes they're very little. they're small and they're depressing. When we start paying attention to those, though, what we're starting to pay attention to is how does the viewer feel? How do they feel about the event? How do they feel about the product and the ideas? How do they feel about the brand? How do they feel about these events? And what affects all of those things is how they feel about themselves when they're watching it. Do they feel important? Do they feel connected? Do they feel, that's what we pay attention to. And those numbers give us some sense of what that means. When we pay attention to that, we start redesigning how we build these events. And one of the things that we found very quickly is what we call hybrid events, where there's anybody in the room, like today. The online audience feels like they're in the back of the room, because I'm now looking down at a bunch of people who are in the front row. They're in the kiddie table, and they're in the back room, and they don't complain about it. They don't write bad, angry emails, but they also don't come back after 4 events. They don't stay after the second day. They don't stay all the way through the whole day because they don't feel important. They don't feel connected. And so what we've done, and I define digital first events very specifically as we take the speakers out of the room and we put them on the screen. Now here, that doesn't make sense. When you have 5,000 or 10,000 people, everyone's looking at iMags anyway. So the thing is that we take the speakers out, and what we're able to do at that point is we're able to put the speakers in front of a whole lot of monitors. We're able to improve the eye line, improve the framing, improve the lighting, improve the audio, improve all those things, because a stage is kind of a pretty horrible compromise, in all of those things to make that work. So we put them in that studio. We make sure that they're only paying attention to that camera. And when I'm looking at that camera now from that stage, the people in the main room I can still talk to them. I can have a return camera. I can see them. I can hear them. I can say, you in the blue shirt, go ahead and stand up. Everyone can still have an expo. They can still have the little cookies. They can have the lunches. They can have the hallway discussions. So we're not taking that away. But what we do is when we have a digital first event, the speakers are just somewhere where they can be totally conscious and present to everyone. And that means that the plenary is in the front row. The overflow is in the front row. The remote viewing party in Nigeria is in the front row. The person on their phones is in the front row. Everybody's on the front row. Everyone's being looked at. And that is how we define digital first events, is that as soon as you put a speaker and as soon as you put someone that they can look at, you're fighting a million years of evolution. They're gonna talk to that person. They're gonna talk to that person. They're not gonna talk to the online audience at nearly the level. But if we simply put them on a screen behind, in front of a camera or around a camera or right behind a camera, they're now looking at everyone and looking directly into their eyes. And the problem that you have is that I believe this is the future. And the reason I believe this is the future is because we're gonna get used to digital events. Digital events, they're doing that all the time. I'm looking straight into the camera all the time. Tony Robbins is doing an event this week, or did an event this week for 1 million people from his living room. What they're going to get used to with digital events is being on the front row as an online audience. They won't know it. And here's the problem, a lot of times people want to poll their viewers. The viewers won't necessarily know what made them feel that way. And so that it's really, really important to get that eye line, get that attention, get those things. So we defined digital first very carefully as we separated the speakers from the physical audience so that they can pay attention and be present to everyone. And the only place that's different is sports, because everyone in sports is a spectator. So they're not being interacted with in the same way. But then after that, when we get into digital first events, we're now flipping the presentations. So we tell people, you want to talk for 10 minutes and answer questions for 40, not talk for 40 and answer questions for 10. Because most of our presentations are, they handle insomnia really, really well. So we want to get out of that. And what we find is when we flip those presentations to a 10-minute presentation with 40 minutes of presentation, or even sending them the videos ahead of time. I think keynotes on stage are probably, almost gone. And I think because it's too slow. It doesn't keep people's attention.
I want to respond to everything that he just said, but I'll tell you my story first. So to answer the first question, which is, we had a different definition of digital first pre-pandemic versus now. Pre-pandemic, we do anything from sort of departmental town halls all the way up to 20,000 people arena esports shows. I'm headed to London to do one tomorrow. We do that big, wide sort of range of content. One of the things we always talked about pre-pandemic, that was there's always going to be more people at home than there are in the room. So we have to be digital first. We have to pay attention to everyone that's working at home. We spent a lot of time, choosing my words carefully, spent a lot of time pre-pandemic just catering to the room. But we had to start to change it and say, it's about people at home, it's about people at home. When the pandemic hit, it was all about the people at home. So we had to rethink the way we did everything. Now that we're sort of through it and we've started to get our feet under us, we're starting to sort of reevaluate what we're doing, when, why, and how. As we look at the different, to kind of what Alex was talking about, the different goals and KPIs of each event and of each program, mix into that with the budget allocation to each program. Now we can make some decisions on what is going to be, again, definition of the word changes, what is going to be digital first, or as we like to talk about a lot of times, is all remote, whether it's all remote talent, all remote fans, all remote crew, when we're going to do that, when we're going to be a hybrid of the two, or when we are going to be doing an in-person event. So to go back to Alex's point about people not writing letters in the gaming business, everyone writes letters. Everyone tweets, everyone puts in the chat, so they have no problem with telling us exactly how they feel about events in the exact moment it's happening. But part of the in-person portion of the program is twofold. One is the community aspect of gaming and the fact that everyone wants to be a part of it and everyone wants to be there with people. So the front row concept is really interesting, except for a lot of our fans want to see the rest of the other fans there. They want to be a part of that experience, even if they can't physically fly to London or come out here to San Francisco. They want to be a part of it. So they want to see the crowd and they want to see a part of that. But we have other events where people are so focused on the gameplay and they're so into the feeds that are coming through, because a lot of times people are watching a lot of the content we create to learn, right? They're learning how to get better at the game, so it's about that video. It's about that content that's coming through the console or the PC. So we have to make those decisions sort of case by case, point by point. I can go deep into the rest of your stuff, but let's move on to the next question, and then we'll go back down.
Well, and I'll say that we've already heard a few of the challenges of what makes an event, like what a digital-first event has to overcome, and that's the need of connection. And I think each of our companies is trying to solve for that, depending on the use case of the event and what their audience is, their goal is for each event. And it's, I think, very different for each of us how we approach these events. But we've also heard some of the things that we should keep in mind. So the KPIs are different, the metrics that you're looking at. We've heard about, how long are you actually watching and what matters in a digital first event. So I think going forward, as other companies are planning their digital first events and their strategy, if a digital event is right for them, what are your biggest trends or things to keep in mind when you're planning a digital first event?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it there. My first thought would be, do you need a digital event? What is the purpose of the event? Who are you trying to connect with? Is the digital event the tool that you need for that specific job? It's a tool in the toolbox, but sometimes it's better to have an in-person event that isn't streamed, where we can get together. I think the second thing is, don't be afraid to innovate, but bring people along with you. Just because I know what I can do with some of our online production tools, and I know that they will work, doesn't necessarily mean that key stakeholders in my organization are going to say, yeah, sure, go for it. I have to bring them along with me and show them and build up that trust. And I think for us, the big important piece is, for our online viewers, we're not just pushing out a video for them to watch. We want that digital experience. And so it is about choosing a way to display that video that will draw people in, that will keep people connected for the whole day, be it with networking, with specific or exclusive content that is only available for them, while not diminishing an in-person event. And so partnering with incredibly smart partners and other companies to pull all those things together for us has been critical.
That's really interesting that you're saying, if I understood correctly, that we are actually flipping some of the experiences where you've got some experiences that are only available for the digital attendee, where before events, the digital attendee had a lesser experience, and now we're focusing on how do we make that better.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's all about keeping that retention, keeping them engaged, keeping them around for the 2 days. They've purchased a ticket for our event. We want them to hear from everyone and learn from everyone, and it doesn't do us any favors in retaining these customers year over year if they're dropping off. Yeah. So the event has to be valuable.
And we're dealing with shorter attention spans, definitely. Absolutely. Online and at home. So I'll go to you, Alex.
Yeah, I think that, again, when you start building hybrid events, which I don't define as the same as digital first events, just look at how much work you're spending integrating remote speakers, integrating the audience. Look at how much effort you're now spending on something that you wouldn't have to if they weren't in the same room. Just because now if I want to bring remote hosts in, I can have 2 people in the studio, 3 people remote, and that's seamless in a studio environment, going out to even, a series of physical ones. Because what we're looking at is we're looking at an event like this, but how many rooms can we make that look like this one in New York, in Cape Town, in London? And when we go to digital first, all of those have the same experience. So when we put all the people in the studio and all the interaction, everybody has an equal experience, and they can have the little tables out there, and they can do all the things that we're doing here. We have a lot of discussions with clients that are talking about carbon footprint. So do we really need all those people to come from all over the world when they could do it in their own city? But if we don't give them the same experience, a first-class experience, from this. And so it's not just your online viewers, it's the remote viewing venues that are going to be, that could be on equal, and we've been building these kind of remote viewing sessions for 10 years now. So it's not, it can be done in many, many cities all at one time. Speakers are in this one or that one or virtual or all those other things. And you really want to look at, when we stop worrying about integrating the physical and the remote, what we end up with, and we let them be, there's a remote experience, there's a remote venue experience, and maybe there is no remote venue. Maybe all the venues are just a cloud of meetings. But that is very hard to do in a hybrid event, because you're tying it's basically like in contact with that little seat that's at the bottom. It's shaking really bad, and as soon as you unconnect it, everything becomes nice and smooth and easy to do. The other thing to remember is how important questions are. I know we're not using questions here, but we're moving very fast. I get up every morning and I have this thing called Office Hours Global, and I get up every morning and I answer questions. And me and a group, 15 or 20 people, answer questions every morning. There's no agenda. We literally get up and people start asking questions, and every day we answer 50 to 60 questions in over 2 hours. And the average view time, for those who track average view time, is 72 minutes. So, and so
Very high.
it's, like on Facebook, you're happy to get 28 seconds. On YouTube, a really good thing might be 6 or 7 minutes. We sit at 72 minutes on the YouTube stream, which doesn't have any comments. We're at 22, 25 minutes. And so people, when they feel like they're part of it, we want to keep their attention active. When people are in an active attention mode, they're going to absorb 3 times more information than when they're in a passive attention mode. And when you don't figure it out, when they feel like they're in the back row, they start checking their email, their text, their other things, which some of us are doing here too. But the thing is that we want to figure out how we keep them in that active mode. And Q&A and interaction is one of the most important things. And the last thing I'll say is something you'll hear in the next couple of years is kinetic, audience kinetics. We've done a couple things where we allow the audience to affect physical items in the room. So we did one where we let them light a flamethrower up. And so if they voted enough times or said fire enough times, it would light a 40-foot flame, and we 140,000 interactions a minute. When we look at kinetic interaction, it is like fission. And we haven't figured out how to contain it, so it just blows off everywhere. It literally just dropped our event into the ground because people got so excited about it. And so that's the front edge of digital events that we're looking at, or these digital first events. And we don't know how to contain it yet, but we know that it's going to be a huge part of what we're doing next.
So
first of all, I am 100% getting a flamethrower at my show tomorrow night, so we can do that.
So
thank
awesome.
you for that idea. So just to build on both of those things. So first is the interactivity portion of the program, which is we were okay at it pre-pandemic, and we entertained people in the room. We gave them things to look at. We gave them things to play with a little bit, but it wasn't to the level that it could have been. During the pandemic, because everybody was digital, we had to come up with all sorts of tools to integrate to integration and interactivity within the broadcast on the screen, so people could feel like they were a part of it, they were watching with other people. We got really good at that. Now that we're back to in-person events and we're bringing people together again, what is that balance, and how do we make sure we're keeping the people in the room as engaged as now the people at home are, who have made a jump forward? So that's one of those interesting things that we're working on. And like I said, 100% I'm getting a flamethrower. So I'm excited about that. And then the other one was, the budget thing that we were talking about, which was the hybrid model of in-person. When is it in-person? When is it hybrid? There's a couple of interesting pieces to that. For us, there are some things that we physically can't do as a remote production, as a truly sort of digital-only production. As an example, some of the games that we have use FIFA as an example. FIFA is a game that's played all around the world. The problem is the gameplay is pinged off of local servers, and so I can't have a person in London play a person in California. One of them will be at a disadvantage if it's on a North American server or a UK server. So in order to get them to play, I gotta get them together in the same room. Now, look at a game. So there's a decision I have to make there. It's only 2 people. It's a 1v1. It doesn't kill my budget. I can do that in person. A game like Apex Legends is another example, which is, if those of you don't know, it's a battle royale. It is a game of 20 teams, 3 people on a team. Last team standing wins. That's 60 people. So if I'm going to do an in-person event, I got to travel 60 people plus their plus ones, plus the crew, plus everybody. It blows my budget way out of the water. Now I can do a lot more events for a lot less money and then save all that money and do a big, blowout event once a year, a couple times a year. So those are the types of decisions that we got to make when we're deciding which type of event we're doing.
And just to add to that, one thing that we want to think about is how often we need, what you were saying, how often we need to do the digital first event. A lot of what we're looking at is the reason that we have events like this was because we had to rent a space, and then we had to put people in it, and then we had to do all those things. And a lot of what we're talking about with clients is how do you, if you're not constrained by time and space, how many times would you do these events? And so the physical events can be something that happens once a year, once every 6 months, once a quarter, and then they're the tent poles, and then between them you have all these digital events that can support everybody, that cost very, very little to execute, and can get done and keep that conversation going all year. And I think that a lot of people keep on feeling like they want to come to a physical event, but those digital events, I think, are going to be a huge future and potentially the future of what we're doing because you can scale. We have to remember when we do a physical event, we're ignoring 99.9999% of our addressable market.
So to summarize, we heard that digital events have a much bigger reach, potentially, if done right, but that you should also very much consider your scenario and decide if that approach is right for your event. And then, I guess, get a flamethrower and bring your audience.
It's awesome.
You should be careful what you say on stage with a flamethrower. But bring your audience along, get them involved. I know we're also working on how to put that digital audience closer to the presenter and get them involved in the conversation, because that is when you get people hanging out longer and actually watching your content that you are putting so much time and effort into bringing to them. So thank you all for all of your interesting perspectives. Again, we'll be here. Connect with us over the next break, and you'll hear, I think, very different answers potentially from each of us, depending on how we are doing digital first events for our companies. And then I'm going to leave Alex here as he's going to do the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, bud.